Okay, let us start. I don't know what happened. So this is Karma Yoga, Yoga of Action, Work in Krishna Consciousness. Okay, we are in this chapter 3. We're almost trying to come to the end. So before we start, let us do our Mangalacharan, pay obeisance to Sri Radharada Govinda. Om Ajnana Timirandasya Nananjana Salakaya Chakshurmitamena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manabhishtam Stapitamena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Pada Kamalam Shri Guru Vaishnavscha Shri Rupam Sagarajatam Sahagana Raghunatham Vittam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadotam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Sri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Sri Vishakana Vittamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindho Dino Bandho Jagat Pate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Takta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanusute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vancha Kalpaturabhyascha Kripa Sindhavevacha Patitam Nam Pavnebhyo Vaishnavyo Namo Namaha Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Iti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pasha Deshatarine Jayo Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadara Shiva Sadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna. Thank you. Thank you for coming. So we are in this, the last section, beware of lust and anger. So we saw with dealing with confusion which Arjuna had, and from Karma Kanda to Karma Yoga. So this was the flow chart we were following, where Krishna talked about our duty, how to do the prescribed duties. I like the thing. And then he talked about the Nishkama Karma Yoga and how even if you are qualified for sannyas, you should still do your duty because you have to be a role model for the others. Now there's another important question which Arjuna is going to ask. So for that, it's a very interesting one. So let us see that. So what did we see in the last? The Lord Krishna said that those persons who execute their duties according to my injunctions and who follow his teaching faithfully without envy become free from bondage of fruitive actions. So he says you do Nishkama Karma Yoga, you do the activities, but you do it as per my injunctions. That means, and do it selflessly. And you follow this teaching faithfully without envy, then you will be free from the reactions of the whatever action. And then he said, so we came to know about the purpose of Bhagavad Gita. We said, surrendering all your work unto me. That's what he said. Do whatever do, you do the work for me. And with full knowledge of me, that's whatever the sacrifice, without desires for profit, with no claim of proprietorship. And free from lethargy. That means you should not be lazy. You should try to, that depends upon how, to the degree of surrendering we have. So we saw this is where we start with the bhakti, says. But if you don't do that, but those who out of envy disregard these teachings and do not follow them regularly are to be considered bereft of all knowledge. And whatever they endure, they cannot reach perfection. That's what here clearly he says. But and then he also cautions, even a man of knowledge acts according to his own nature, for everyone follows the nature as acquired from the three modes. So we have to do our duty as per our nature, swabhava. And by theoretical knowledge or thing, it's not possible. Even if it is a highly educated person, It's impossible to get out of this entangled of Maya by theoretical knowledge or thinking we are soul and not the body. So you have to, it's very difficult. And there are principles to regulate the attachment and aversion pertaining to the senses, and they should not come under the control of such things. So what does he clearly say that? That if you look at the explanation, you can understand. So those who are in Krishna consciousness are naturally reluctant to engage in material sense gratification. But those who are not in consciousness, what happens? They should follow. If they're not in Krishna consciousness, at least you follow the regulations as given in the Vedas. That's what he says. Rules and regulations of the revealed scriptures. But if you have unrestricted sense enjoyment, then that is the cause of material entanglement. So that we are very clear. So we have to either we follow the rules and regulations of thing or be in Krishna consciousness. Okay. That's what here is very clear. But therefore, in spite of another thing, he says, even if you follow these rules and regulations, there is a possibility of going astray because we can make mistakes because we are human beings who can't, we are likely to commit mistakes. And we don't have proper senses, we have improper things and cheating propensity. So there are certain things which all humans have. So he says, even if you practice the regulations and things, but you might go astray because there could be a chance of an accident. So he says you have to, there is early folly. So trying to regulating sensation should be avoided. At least you be attachment to Krishna consciousness or acting always in the loving service of Krishna. What happens? You can detach from the kind of sensory activities. For no one should try to be detached from. That is why it is very important to be in Krishna consciousness at any stage of life. That's what here Prabhupada writes. You have to be very careful because you can easily fall down. And also, you have to do your prescribed duties and not as another thing. This is very important because we may not know how to, even if we know how to do it properly, but it's always to do as per our nature. Now comes the questions, very important question in this. That's what we have been talking about. Next, Arjuna asks an important question. After hearing text 3.4, one may determinedly think, okay, now from today onwards, I will steadily do my duty and control my attachments and aversions. I will act according to the Shastra. So like, we do New Year resolutions and all that. So in the beginning, we'll have so much of enthusiasm and we say, no, I will do like that and that. So this happens. But experiences state that however such immediate inspirations may prove difficult to adhere to over time. So how long will you be able to adhere to that determination and this? So there is likelihood of falling down. So Arjuna being aware of reality, he knows that is the realistic situation. The ideal is that you will think you will do it, but reality will be like, you might slowly, you might come out of that determination. So being aware of reality, ask the following questions. Arjuna uvacha, ata kena prayuktrayam papam charati purushaha anicham api vasneya balad eva niyojita. Balad. O descendant of Vrishni. Vrishni means comes from the descendant of Vrishni. By what is one impelled to sinful acts, even unwillingly, as if engaged by force? So there is something which is forcing me to do sinful acts. What is that and why it's so? That is, you have made a regulation, you have made a determination that I will follow all the regulations and all that, but still I may not follow. I might fall down from that. And what is that which is forcing me to do these sinful acts? And this is quite relevant for us, because today's situation, it might be in any other situations also when, like, for the addictions, as I talked yesterday about the smoking addiction and a TV addiction or the addiction to food or even workaholics. Today, people are so addicted to work, they can't stop working. Workaholics they have. So these kind of things, which is just forcing them and they're not able to come out of that kind of thing. What is that force which is doing it? So this is the quite relevant for us. It's not that the questions whichever Arjuna is asking is not, it is for the day-to-day life also, right? So what does the Lord say? Bhagavan Uvacha. Kama Esha Krodha. Kama is the last. Esha Krodha is the anger. Rajaguna Samudbhava. Mahashanam Mahapapma. Viddiyenam Hiha Varina. Vairina. Vairina means enemy. So Supreme Personality of Godhead said, it is lust only, Arjuna, which is born of contact with the material mode of passion. And later it gets transformed into wrath, and which is the all devouring sinful enemy of this world. So what is that? Like, you start off, you have some sense objects, and you might slowly, you will be starting thinking about it, looking at it. And then slowly you start getting an attachment to them. And then it will lead to willing, and then you start doing it and come to the stage. And when you're not feeling happy, you'll get into the unsatisfied. Lust results in anger, delusion, bewilderment, and loss of intentions. Then one falls down into gross. So this is what we saw in 2.62 to 2.63. Like, starting, you might say, no, I'll just smoke one and see how it looks like, because all my friends are telling. And then you start liking it and get attached to it. And then slowly, it becomes like a habit. And if you can't smoke, you become very angry. And then all that other things come up. So these are the thinking stage, feeling stage, and the willing and doing stage. This we have seen. So the Lord is bringing back the same thing. And he says, this is what happens, that the lust, that is the desire which we have, which you want to do it. That is one which is falling, and which is all for Vairina. This is the sinful enemy for the world. So when a living entity comes, anybody wants to Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Mataji.
Yes, Mataji, go ahead and read the puppet.
Yes, Mataji. When a living entity comes in contact with the material creation, his eternal love for Krishna is transformed into lust in association with the mode of passion, or in the other words, the sense of love of God becomes transferred into lust, as milk in contact with sour tamarind is transformed into yogurt. Then again, when lust is unsatisfied, it turns into wrath. Wrath is transformed into illusion, and illusion continues the material existence. Therefore, lust is the greatest enemy of the living entity, and it is lust only which induces the pure living entity to remain entangled in the material world. Wrath is the manifestation of the mode of ignorance. This mode exhibits themselves as wrath and other corollaries. If it's therefore the mode of passion, instead of being degraded into the mode of ignorance, is elevated to the mode of goodness by the prescribed method of living and acting, then one can be saved from the degradation of wrath by spiritual attachment.
Thank you,
Hare
Mataji.
Krishna.
Hare Krishna. So here it very clearly says that whatever we think we are loving somebody, we are loving, but actually we are trying to exploit them. I mean, it's not love, it is lust. It's a perverted expression. So here, once you come into the contact with the material world, we have forgotten the Lord. And so our, that love, whatever we had, it is there, that something, it becomes transforms into a lust. So this is what Lust need not be just to the sexual lust, it could be lust for anything of the sense pleasures, whatever pleasure we want to have by the using our sense gratification, right? So if that means you will be in the mode of passion, and that once it's unsatisfied, lust will naturally lead to wrath, right? Anger. So Prabhupada writes here, if you can, from the mode of passion, if you elevate yourself to the mode of goodness by regulating the senses and by following things, then what happens? Then it is much better than falling down to the mode of ignorance by prithik. That way, by spiritual attachment. That's why Krishna consciousness is important for all of us. That is the reason this Bhagavad Gita is applicable to everyone, because everyone is in this predicament, right? So, and here we say that we have a free will. That is, each and every entity is a Satchitananda. We have little of everything. We are an expansion from the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So we have a little of that independence, but we have misused it. And misused it because we wanted to enjoy ourselves. Because we had the desire to enjoy ourselves, the Lord has created this material world. So this material creation is created by the Lord to give us facility to condition souls to fulfill their lustrous propensities. And when they get baffled by prolonged lustful activities, the living entities begin to inquire about their reasons. So when does he come to realize that? When he gets frustrated and he says, I have got everything and have all the, I have a house, I have good family, children, I have a status in the society and all. But there will be some as though incompleteness, as though he's not completely happy. Still, he may not be fully happy. So he will be wondering why after all that. So when he reaches that frustration stage, when he comes to think, why is these things happening? Why it is all that? That's when he starts inquiring about his purpose in life. So that's what Prabhupada writes. When completely baffled by prolonged restful activities, the living entities begin to inquire about their real position. That's when he'll start thinking, what am I here for? What is my purpose in life? So this inquiry is what it says in the Vedanta Sutra as Atato Brahma Jignasa. Then he should turn towards inquire about the Supreme. So this is what we're so if therefore lust is transformed into love for the Supreme, that means that is what we are talking about Krishna consciousness. Or in other words, desiring everything for Krishna. Then both lust and wrath can be spiritualized. So you can have desires, but you need to purify that. That means you have to, that desire for Krishna. That means you have to desire to do for the Lord. Once you do that, then everything gets spiritualized. And here, Prabhupada gives the example of Hanuman, who exhibited his wrath by burning the golden city of Ravana. By doing so, he became the greatest devotee of the Lord. So here in Bhagavad Gita, the Lord is inducing Arjuna to engage his wrath upon his enemies for satisfaction of the Lord. So if you use desire, your anger, everything, if you are employing in Krishna consciousness, then it becomes our friend instead of our enemy. Otherwise, it is our enemy. And this enemy is there for everyone. It's not only Arjuna has an enemy like Karna, that's what is thing, but this is the internal enemy which everyone faces. Everyone has this. Everyone has these temptations. We just fall into the temptations for this sense gratification. And so the Krishna says this is the last, which is the enemy for every living entity. Okay. So the minute Arjuna asks the question, the Lord gives him the answer directly. It doesn't go roundabout, it immediately says lust is the one which is your enemy and iha vairenya. Okay. So, and because from mode of passion only we get into this sense gratification. So Prabhupada, right? If you elevate to mode of goodness instead of falling down to ignorance, that is better. And now the Lord will explain more. So first he gave you the answer that lust is the enemy, which is the cause for that falling down from to impulse, which impels you to do sinful acts, right? And now is giving the characteristics of this lust. So there are degrees of lust, like as fire is covered by smoke, as mirror is covered by dust, as embryo is covered by the womb, the living entity is simply covered by different degrees of this lust. So you can think like, see, trees are there, they're completely there, like in the being in an embryo. They are fully not able to conscious. They cannot think about Krishna conscious or anything. They're just like a jada. They are living and think, but they're completely covered. They're by this. Whereas the animals, they're like the mirror, which is covered by dust. You can wipe out by little consciousness. But human beings, they have that. That like is when there's a fire and there's a smoke, even the smoke covers it, but still you can see the fire, right? Flame. And by regulating the smoke, you can make the fire, the flame to burn very well, right? That. So it's a human beings are the only one who can address this enemy, address this lust, and he can come out of it. That's what this illustration is. And you also another way also you can look at, like this is the degrees of covering as. So it could be in the, when your knowledge is completely covered, you're fully into this sense gratification, then you are completely covered by lust. You just want to enjoy and you want to the sense gratification. You're not bothered about the spiritual and thing, what else. You're completely covered. Your knowledge is completely covered. You're into the lustful desires. But when you do chanting and you take up this thing, then slowly the cleansing happens. That means you can wipe the mirror and wipe the dust off, and the cleansing process takes place. That's what Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says, Chaito Darpana Mahajanam Tava Maha. That is, cleansing takes place by doing the chanting of Hare Nama. That it is possible by turning towards the Lord. I think that slowly you can cleanse this. So you can slowly come out of the lustful desires. And then beginning of Krishna consciousness, slowly you can see the fire, though your smoke is. So this is the beginning of Krishna. So you can, this is another perspective of looking at this. So, but the wise living entity's pure consciousness becomes covered by the eternal enemy in the form of lust, which is never satisfied and which burns like fire. So now he talked about the degrees of the lust, and then now he's giving the characteristics of this. You think that, okay, if I satisfy this desire, then I will be happy. No, some more desire will come. Then again it will come. So it will keep on adding. It will never end, So he says, this formless, it's never satisfied. It burns like a fire. It will just consume you. You will become just involved into that, succumb to that lustive desires. So this is more characteristics. So it covers the pure consciousness and is a symbol of ignorance. It is never satisfied, and it's like adding fuel to fire. That's what Prabhupada gives an analogy. Like when you add fuel to fire, the fire will burn more and more rather than get quenched, right? So how to stop it? You have to stop feeding it and let it die. That means you don't feed to the lusting desires. You try to restrict yourself, restrict your senses. That is the only way you can stop that. And now, see, it talked about the degrees of the lust, what are the characteristics, and how you cannot, if you keep given to the lustful desires, you'll be more and more desires will come and you'll just get embroiled into that. But only way is to stop feeding it. Then how? And now he's giving much more explanation. Like where, see, he says lust is your enemy. Then if you know, but you need to know where the enemy is located. Like in a battlefield, unless you know the enemy's location, you cannot fight, isn't it? You cannot get prepared. So if you have to fight this enemy which you have, then you should know where it is sitting. So he says in this, so he continues to say, the senses, the mind and intelligence are the sitting place of this lust. So through them, the lust covers the real knowledge of the living entity and bewilders. So what happens? It's the senses. I think this picture you all have seen now, where the body is the uh, carriage and the soul is sitting in it. And you have the five senses here: eyes, nose, hands, ear, tongue. And then it is reins are the mind, and the intelligence is the one which is holding the reins, right? So now he's going to give us how the senses, the mind, and intelligence are the sitting place of this lust. Okay. Is there something to see in this? So the enemy has captured different strategic positions in the body of the conditioned soul. Therefore, Lord is giving hints so that one wants to conquer the enemy who may know where we can be found. So mind is the center of all activities of the senses. So thus, when we hear about the sense objects, the mind generally becomes a reservoir of all sense gratification and become the repositories of lust. So the intelligence department becomes the capital of such one, because mind will be so strong, no, it will just overcome the intelligence, even if it tries to thing. But intelligence is immediately next door neighbor to the spirit soul. And then what happens? This lusty intelligence will say, no, no, you can't do it. And that will influence the spirit soul. So like, you have an exam, take an exam and you're in the hostel and you have to study for your, prepare for your exam. But there in the common room, there your friends are all watching the cricket match. So you're so much tempted. You'll think, okay, let me go at least see one, what Sachin Tendulkar is doing, and then I'll come back and see. So what happens, then your intelligence is saying, no, no, you can control yourself. You just see one for half an hour and you come up. So like that, and why not? You have already done things, so you don't need to prepare so much. So like that, the mind and the intelligence and all will influence the soul to acquire a false ego and identify itself with the matter, and thus with the mind and senses. So the spirit soul gets addicted to enjoying the material senses and mistakes that as the true happiness. This is what happens. So spirit soul is, so it gets uh, thinking whatever that the last intelligence is telling, it thinks it is the right way and that is the way we have to be happy in this world, just enjoy and nothing has to be done. So like that, it becomes contaminated. So that's what problem. So here, because both the thing, all the three places, is the place for the lust. That's why soul which is there can easily get bewildered. Right? So once we understand that, see now how the Lord is explaining clearly or gives a good analysis of about the lust, how it plays a part in our life. Therefore, Arjuna, best of the Bharatas, from the very beginning, carve this great symbol of sense by regulating the senses and slay this enemy of knowledge and self-realization. Tasmat tvam indriyani adau niyama bharata sabha papanam prajahi hinam Nana Vijnana Nashana. So, slay this destroyer of selfish. So, sense, mind, and think. How to conquer? There's the sitting place. And what are the senses? We have the sight, hearing, taste, touch, and smell. And the mind has got everything and it keeps storing it. Okay. And the soul, center of all activities, reservoir of the bodies, lusty intelligence. So it influences, right? So how to come out? You have to regulate the senses. And how to do it? By learning Krishna. By understanding this analysis, then you will understand how this is happening and by regulating. So even if you're a late beginner, you can become lover of God by following regulative principles of devotional service. So that's the reason why the Lord says, this is the reason why you're feeling unhappy and why you're feeling angry with yourself, why you're not why you are getting lost to the temptations. And then he continues to say, Indriyani paranyahur, Indriya param manaha, Manasta tu para buddhir ye buddhi prastata. What is he telling here? Your senses are superior to the dull matter, and mind is higher than the senses, and intelligence is still higher than the mind, and soul is even higher than the intelligence. Okay, but you're forgetting that. You are getting succumbed to this. So if you can directly regulate the senses, don't go through all this, don't try to control your mind or intelligence. If you can directly control the senses by spiritual intelligence, then you'll be able to conquer this enemy. So that's what we had done. The solution is hierarchy of sitting says we saw mind, senses. So what you do, you start hearing to the Lord, different outlets for activities appliances. So we have that. So Shravanam, Kirtanam, Smaranam. If you start looking into Krishna consciousness, then you'll be able to regulate the things. So even though the soul is master of intelligence, mind, and senses, unless it is strengthened by Krishna consciousness, there is every chance of falling down due to the agitated mind. So this is the reason why we need to strengthen the soul by spiritual intelligence. So thus knowing oneself to be transcendental to the thing, senses, mind, and intelligence, O mighty Arjuna, should steady the mind by deliberate spiritual intelligence. And thus by spiritual strength, you can conquer this insatiable enemy known as lust. So here, it's not that you've been able to do it because your mind is very strong. It can influence this intelligence and it can also bewilder the mind, senses. So what happens? The soul will get bewildered. So he says, if you can strengthen the soul by spiritual intelligence and give the spiritual strength, then you can conquer this enemy. Because these three are their sitting places for the last. Okay. So this is how our consciousness is. Suppose you are in the bodily platform. You only want to enjoy, don't bother with anything. You're just like the animal, eating, sleeping, this thing, that's all. But you can go one step further where you have certain goal. You want to become thing, you have a passion to do something, to do that. You're in the essential platform. You want to achieve something. You don't want what the others are having and all that. So you start working towards that with the instead of being in the mode of ignorance, you go to the mode of passion to work towards that. And then slowly you can rise your thing and then come to the mode of goodness where you start thinking peacefully. Do I need these 4 houses? Do I need to work so much? Do I need to do that? What is this thing happening? Let me go and try to get a peace of mind instead of running behind certain things. So you come to the mode of plateau, that is the mental plateau, where your conscious level is slowly increasing from animal propensity towards that. And then when you start inquiring, that's when you come to the intellectual platform. What is the purpose of my life? And where am I going? What do I have to do? And then you start looking into the scriptures, and then slowly you can rise to the spiritual platform and get the Anand. So this is how our level of Krishna conscious level can rise above the things. Okay. Progressive ladder. So you have been, whatever I've talked about that, animal life, then karma kanda, doing it as per the Vedas. Then slowly you start giving partly to the Lord, sacrifices, and then Nishkama, selfless bhakti, and then you can raise to bhakti level. Okay. So now Krishna is telling us how to worship through work and what is the hindrances we have and who is our enemy and how to overcome that. And that's the reason law of karma we learned and how it is getting taught. So prescribed duties. It says in the verse in Bhagavatam at 11th canto, 5th verse, 5th chapter 41. Anyone who has completely surrendered unto Krishna, Mukunda, giving up all other duties, is no longer a debtor, nor is obliged to anyone, nor to the demigods, nor sages, nor the people in general. But actually, if we have not surrendered, we are indebted to all these people. Devarishi, Bhutakta, Nirnama, Pitranam. We are obliged to the demigods. We have to do sacrifices and thank them for everything and for the scriptures the sages have given. and for the kinsmen and the people in the society we live, and all that, humanity and the forefathers. But if you have surrendered to the Lord, then you don't need to give up all other things, because already everything gets taken care of. Okay, our thing. Then what is the regulations? This is what our Prabhupada has given as key spiritual practices. You have to be association of devotees. That will help us to be in. Otherwise, what happens? If you can get into some situation and thing, again, you might fall down for temptations. Again, you might fall. So it's better to have a association of the devotees where you can do your sadhana. And then books and scriptures will always help us, like reading the thing, keep reading, rereading the Bhagavad Gita. Then you'll get to understand and why is Lord saying this. And then chanting. Chanting, as I said, it purifies our desires, purifies our thing. It cleanses our hearts of all anarthas, and slowly we'll be able to enter into Krishna consciousness. And deity worship is also good. And eating prasadam. Then engage in work or eat prasadam. Okay, and of course we should have these restrictions. It was given by the meat eating, gambling, and no intoxication. So this is what Prabhupada had done. And many people were saying, why are you putting so many restrictions? Why don't you be relaxing? He said, this process will never work. Because because Krishna himself is telling, you have to regulate your senses. You have to strengthen your spiritual intelligence, because you have to strengthen the soul, because lust is there, which is sitting in those three places, and it will just pull down the human being. So he says it will never work. So unless you regulate the senses and unless you do it, it won't work. Okay. So these are the things which, and how it will be gradually thing is, first you have to have a little faith, and then with association, and if you start working on the practice of Krishna consciousness, slowly your anarthas will come out, all the unwanted things, and it will strengthen your faith. And then what happens is your taste and practice of Krishna consciousness will increase, and you start liking it because it will be more peaceful. And then you'll gradually go to the other, you'll get attached to it. And it's a long way, but still, Shravanam, Kirtanam, Smaranam. That's where you can slowly remove all your unwanted anarthas, remove the dust in your hearts. Okay. So, what did we have? The lessons we learned today is we'll have desires, we have. Okay, desires are there, because if the desires are not there, we are not living. But we need to purify them. We need to work. We have to work for everything is for Krishna. So that, starting with the eating things, and slowly you control your senses. That's what one thing. Then we looked at the act of karma. How there will be a sinful reactions, whether it is a pious activities or impious activity, you'll always have some reactions. Unless you work for the Lord, that will be the one which has no reactions, and you'll be. So you have to do your prescribed duties. It's not that you should not do your duties. You have to work, because we have not yet matured. We have a lot of dust inside us, anarthas. So we need the work. We need to work. And when you work, how you work? You work for Krishna. Work for everything for Krishna. That's the lesson. And another thing people asked, how is it impelling? See, the papam, no, it's like a seed. It meant it. You might have done some penance. You might have, okay, like as yesterday one of the Prabhuji said, we go to the church and we confess, and you think now the Lord has forgiven you. But that desire for doing the sin is still there in the heart. It has not been cleansed. It has not gone away from your heart. So when you're put into situations or in certain environment, you might again succumb to that desire. So again, you will do the sinful acts. So that is still there in your heart, which has to remove. And that can be removed only by spiritual activities, only by devotional service. That's what the Lord says. It's there sitting in your heart, in your mind and your thing, intelligence. So it is not gone out of it. You might have only done some penance, like some prashchit, like in Vedic says, no, you do some penance. So if you have to remove it totally from the root, then you have to do devotional service. You have to spiritualize by strengthening your soul. So this is what is it. And if people who have come to Jnanis, who have done Krishna Nishkama Karma Yoga, they still have to act, they still have to do their duty, work here in the thing, but they will be working with detachment and they will be like a role model to us. So when Arjuna was worried, there will be a Varna Shankara, that is tradition, family tradition will be lost. He says, no, you will be the role model for them. Yudhishthira Maharaj will be like a role model for them and you'll be leading them by being in this material world and doing your Nishkama Karma. So we saw how slowly you can purify yourself and raise yourself from Karma Kanda to Karma Yoga and then come to Sakama Karma and so this is all about your duty and how to do the duty and how to avoid reactions and there is a possibility of falling down because of the lust and anger. And we looked into that. Okay. Hare Krishna. Vancha kalputrapyascha kripasindevacha patitam napavnebhyo